pledge allegiance to
To
the
the
flag
flag
of the United
States
States
of
of America
America,
and to the
and to
republic for which it
it
stands,
stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for
for
all.
all. Thank you, Anthony, very much. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Councilmember Polito,
Here.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Here.
Councilmember DeGolia,
Yes.
Councilmember Widmer,
Here.
and Mayor Lewis.
I'm here. Thank you very much. So we'll roll into our public comments. I see we have a number of members of the public. Does anyone have a comment to make at this time?
And Mayor, with your okay, I know we have a few folks who joined that mentioned that they'd like to make a public comment. If you're joining by Zoom link, you can use the button down below with reactions to raise your hand. If by phone, dialing *9 will allow you to raise your hand and make a public comment. And please be mindful of 3 minutes. So I see Chris Sturkin. So with your okay, Mayor, I will give him the floor.
Sure. Chris, hello.
Hello, thank you, Mayor Lewis. My name is Chris Turkin, pronouns he, him. I'm the events coordinator at HIP Housing, at Human Investment Project Housing. I know most of you know me already, but tonight I would like to, on behalf of HIP Housing, thank you so much for your support of our affordable housing programs. And to say thank you, and as a reminder of our partnership, I did want to bring attention to our 2022 calendar that I did send you via email earlier today, and the print copies that should be in your inboxes from earlier this afternoon. So those should be in your hands soon. And for those of you who may not know about the calendar project, it is full of information about our affordable housing programs and artwork by children from across the county where they illustrate what home means to them. And we select 12 winners, of course, for every month of the year. And this year's theme is our 50th anniversary. So 2022 is our 50th anniversary. So we're very excited to continue serving Atherton and the rest of the county with our affordable housing programs. In fact, in Atherton, 4 residents did reach out to us for assistance. All 4 of them were either homeless or at risk of homelessness, and 75% of them were seniors, and 100% of them were low income. So your support really does make a difference. And I just wanted to thank you so much again for your support by giving you that calendar. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great meeting.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, and HIP Housing for all the good work you do in our communities. Any other member of the public like to make a comment at this time?
And I don't see any hands, Mayor. I do know that there are a few folks that will want to make a comment after the item 5, City Council reorganization.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to our another fun thing. We're going to give a proclamation presentation to Tom Pressing now. Oh, he got shifted. There you are, Tom. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. So Anthony, did he ever get his big framed?
Should I hold it up?
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Well, then here it is. So I will just take a few seconds to read it so everyone can hear all of the good things that we wanted to say to you, because it is in recognition of the Atherton Disaster and Preparedness Team, ADAPT, member and president, Tom Pressing. Whereas the town would like to take this opportunity to thank ADAPT member and president, Tom Pressing, for his years of service. And whereas ADAPT's sole mission, in partnership with the Atherton Police Department, is to train and organize Atherton residents to be resilient, response capable, and recovery able in the event of a town-wide emergency or disaster event. And whereas Tom Pressing has played an integral role in the general organization, leadership, strategy, planning, and coordination of ADAPT mock disaster drills, along with leading monthly ADAPT meetings, and has served as the main ADAPT liaison with the chief of police and town staff. And whereas the town has been fortunate to have members like Tom Pressing as the go-to resource for disaster and major emergency training and preparation. And whereas the town will be forever grateful for the education, communication, and aid given to Atherton residents, along with the Twitter handle, #Atherton Preparedness. And now, therefore, as mayor of the town of Atherton, and on behalf of the Atherton City Council, I do hereby commend the outstanding community services of Tom Pressing and hope to continue to see him as a valuable resource for our residents. In witness, I have set my hand and caused the seal of the town of Atherton to be affixed this 15th day of December 2021. Elizabeth Lewis. Tom, you deserve all the accolades and more. Thank you so much.
Mayor Lewis and Town Council, thank you for this honor and recognition of the prepared, resilient, response-capable, and recovery-able organization that ADAPT has become over the last 7 years. I was blessed to be given the legacy from Robert Jenkins to Scott Barnum to lead our amazing organization, and I now pass that on to our ADAPT board going forward. I personally wish to thank, again, you, the Town Council, Chief McCulley, George Rodericks, Robert Ovadia, and the town staff for directly supporting our activities. ADAPT has developed over the last 7 years a solid yearly training program which culminates in our community emergency drill to guarantee success and growth going forward. Council members, I ardently request that you support our Chief of Police and our ADAPT board to preserve the ADAPT effort, which has been described as the gold standard of citizen emergency response. We are all ADAPT. I humbly thank you and wish you and all ADAPTers Godspeed.
Much appreciated, Tom. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Best wishes in your retirement and all the happiness. I know you're about to hop on a boat and go for a big cruise. So
Actually, I just got back from the big cruise.
oh, it happened already.
Yeah.
Well, you're looking great. So,
Thank you.
does any other member of the council want to say a few words to Tom?
Oh, sure.
Okay, Rick.
Yeah, Tom, I just want to support the proclamation that Mayor Lewis gave you. It is absolutely well-deserved. You've done a remarkable job leading ADAPT. I consider ADAPT essential to our community, and you have left a mark on it that has not just left the organization far more prepared, but every single one of us that participate in ADAPT more prepared and more knowledgeable about what to do in a disaster. And we need to be, because we know that we're going to be alone and we're going to have to fend our way if we face such a disaster. So I just really appreciate everything that you've done. I think it's an invaluable contribution to our residents.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Widmer, yes?
Sure. First off, I'd like to thank you for your leadership, Tom, but most people that don't understand, or if they haven't participated in the drill, don't know all the work that you put into developing the drills, going over them, 2 and 3 times with the people that are going to be part of the leadership team to make sure that everyone gets a whole lot out of those drills. The preparation that you do and the follow-up that you do thereafter, verifying that everything was done properly, and if it wasn't, identifying that so we have a lesson learned is absolutely invaluable to all the, now hundreds of people that come to the drills, not only here in Atherton, but also in Menlo Park and in East Palo Alto. So that's invaluable training exercise, and I know it takes a substantial amount of time. And thank you for not only your leadership with ADAPT, but also doing such a great job with that. So on behalf of the whole council also, and actually all the residents here, especially not just in Area 4 for me, but everywhere, I think that we all owe you a big debt of gratitude. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Widmer. Councilmember Hawkins Van Willian, I know that you're a captain of your block. So
I am, and I want to mirror what everyone's already said. There's not much more to say on that front, other than thank you, thank you, thank you. And you're not done. I'm not done with you yet. We're still going to meet at least one more time. So
Yes, I know.
don't go too far away. I'm not done with you.
I know.
So thank you. I appreciate it.
good.
Thank you,
Okay.
Diane.
So Mr. Polito, any comments from you? You don't have to, no pressure.
That is pressure, actually. Thank you very
Sorry.
much for your service. We all appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, I wish to reiterate that the city council and the chief are absolutely essential elements behind the scenes, making sure that ADAPT is able to go forward and do what we do best. So again, over the years, as you pass on as council members, please pass it on to future council members and chiefs of police, how vital it is that Councilman DeGolia mentioned how vital we are to the community. Again, thank you all.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to the public if any member of the public has something to say. I do notice on our screen that we have we should welcome our California State Senator Josh Becker, who looks like he's on, as well as Helen Walter, who is Senator Becker's administrator. Hi, Josh, how are you?
Very good, very good.
Good. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you very much. Okay.
Sure. I'll go off video till the appropriate time.
Okay, fine.
We also we have Leslie here from Assemblymember Berman's office, Leslie Bolbeck.
Okay, and I just saw Helen, and then Leslie. Hi, Helen, and then Leslie. Hi.
So I think they're all here to talk after you guys do your.
Yes. Okay, fine. Well, thank you, Tom. We are going to go on to item number 5, which is, we call it the City Council Reorganization. It is also the peaceful transition of power every December, which we go through. And it's really a wonderful thing. And so I think that it says that the Deputy City Manager, City Clerk, Anthony, you're going to kind of tee us up.
I'm happy to do that.
Well, that's what the agenda said. I just didn't, the recommendation. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So as you stated, today is the day that we will look for our new mayor and vice mayor for the year 2022. So that's in accordance with Council Handbook and the Atherton Municipal Code. Essentially, I want to make sure that the mayor, you have an opportunity to deliver an outgoing message. And then at the conclusion of that, I would transition us into declaring the seat for mayor vacant. We'd go through a nomination process where any one of the council members can make a nomination of whomever they'd like. You can't nominate yourself. Then we can either conduct a vote if there are no other nominations on the floor, or if we have multiple nominations, we can systematically go by a vote to see where we get. And then once the mayor seat is filled, we can do the same for the vice mayor seat, and the mayor at that time can lead it, or I'm happy to lead it.
Great. Okay. Well, if I'm being given the floor to say some parting remarks, I will keep it very, very brief. I just want to say that 2021 has been a very, very difficult year in lots of ways for lots of people. We've had to make a lot of adjustments. We've had to do things in a manner where we really aren't or weren't prepared for. But there was a lot of joy towards the end in the fourth quarter here, seeing our new town center become completed enough and to get our staff and our PD into a building that is befitting the level of expertise and talents and stature that all of our government employees and staff deserve. So I just want to thank every one of you. I've heartfelt gratitude for your patience with me and for your understanding of some of my personal circumstances and journey this year. And I look forward to 3 more years on council and working together closely with all the staff and with all the council colleagues going forward. So with that, I would like to take the opportunity to put forth the first candidate, if I may. I think given our council dynamics and where we are in this particular situation, I'd like to nominate, put forth Rick DeGoya to be our next mayor for 2022.
Thank you, Mayor Lewis. So the seat of mayor is vacant, and we have one nomination on the floor for Councilmember Rick DeGoya as mayor.
Yeah, I would like to nominate Bill Widmer. I'll say that when I got involved in town government, I presume I can make a comment or two.
Yes, yes, sir.
8 or 10 years ago, whenever it was, I was kind of surprised the way this worked. It kind of had this peaceful rotation through. It kind of didn't seem like I would expect government to run, but I've been amazed at how well it has worked, how civilized the process has been, and it seems to work very well. I believe that Mr. Widmer is technically the next guy in line based on the rotation we've been following. So I'd like to nominate Bill Widmer for the mayor spot.
Okay. Any other nominations? I don't want to say something. It has not always been that way. There have been people that were in line because of tenure, which I think is what you're kind of alluding to, that were passed over. And I think Mr. Widmer remembers that very well. So just, it's not always been that way. So I think it's given the whole circumstances of the situation. So anyway, that's just my comment. Any other nominations for mayor for this coming 2020 that we will vote on?
So I don't see any. So with your okay, Mayor, we can conduct a roll call vote. We don't need a second for this item. And I would just go in order of what nominations were first made. So I would go with the first nomination first, and then do a roll call vote the way that we conduct all formal motions.
Okay.
So with that, I will call for Councilmember Polito on the nomination for Rick DeGolia as mayor.
No.
Councilmember Hawkins.
Oh, I hate this. This is such a hard thing to do. Sorry. Yes, I'll vote for Rick.
Councilmember George. Councilmember DeGolia is allowed to vote on his own nomination, correct?
Right. Yes.
Councilmember DeGolia.
I'll vote yes.
Councilmember Widmer.
No.
And Mayor Lewis.
Yes, of course.
So with that, we have 3 affirmative votes, so there's no need to go to the next nomination on the floor. And so with that, congratulations. Our mayor for the year 2022 will be Rick DeGolia.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Mayor DeGolia, if you'd like, I can conduct the same process for the vice mayor, or you're welcome.
I'm fine with you handling that, Anthony, and I'd like to make a nomination, which is I'll nominate Bill Widmer to be vice mayor.
Okay. We have one nomination on the floor for Councilmember Widmer to be vice mayor for year 2022. Do we have any other nominations? Well, then we can conduct a formal vote. Councilmember Polito.
I vote in favor of Bill.
Thank you. Councilmember Hawkins.
Yes.
DeGolia.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis,
Yes.
and Councilmember Whitmer.
Yes.
There you have it. Councilmember Whitmer will now be vice mayor for the year 2022. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you for the nomination, Rick. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Mayor DeGolia, you're welcome to make an incoming message. We noticed it, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so we've had a hard 2 years because of this pandemic, and we all hope that this is going to pass and that this next year is going to become closer to what we consider normal. I have a couple different things that I think are really important for us to focus on. One is to focus on the residents and making every opportunity that we can for engagement by the residents and for their voices to be heard. And I would like us to find a way to manage and enable hybrid meetings throughout the entire year. So even though we may be meeting in person, and I hope that we begin to do that soon, that our residents can attend remotely. And it may be convenient for council members at times to attend remotely, but in general, I think we have much more attendance when our residents are able to attend remotely, and I think that we should do everything we can to enable that. And secondly, as I have done before, I'm going to have weekly office hours where every week I'll be available for an hour for any resident to stop by. In the past, I've done that at the main house. Now that we have the new town center, I'm sure I'll do it at the town center, and I'll have to work that out, but I'm going to do that. The second thing that I think is really important for us as a council and that we've always been focused on is to target conservative fiscal management. And I think that, is principally managing our costs, but we also have long-term liabilities that are critical and that we need to address. And I hope this year we can come up with a strategy about how to do that. And I know that George's financial spreadsheet, which we'll be discussing in this meeting later, enables us to address that. So, and I feel very encouraged about that. I also recognize we have major construction projects in front of us. I mean, we're finishing the town center, but we're not done with the town center. The most important new one for me is to have the quad gates built on Watkins so that we're able to declare a second quiet zone in Atherton. In the past, the one item that we've done as a council that had the most positive impact on changing the quality of life of our residents was establishing the quiet zone at Fair Oaks Lane. And I want to see us do that at Watkins, and I hope that we can get those quad gates built this year. I also recognize that there's still plenty of work to be done on the town center, completing it, opening the library, getting the cafe at the library to open at some point this year. We're going to have to do an RFP for that, and transforming the train station. These are all important projects. And that's not all of the construction we have, because we have the largest project in the park in the history of Atherton, which we've already budgeted, the circulation project. I want to see that come off this year, and I think it will significantly improve the experience in the park. And then as part of that, I think in general, as a council, we have a strategic opportunity to revisit our master plans. We need a master plan for the town center. We've identified that. We need to put that together. We have master plans for the park, for drainage, and for the bike ped master plan, which we really haven't paid a whole lot of attention, certainly to the bike ped and the drainage plans, and they've just sat there as paper, and I'd like us to revisit them and prioritize what we consider to be important and set up a program that we can move on those projects over the next few years. So I'm hoping that we're going to come out of this pandemic and we're going to be able to meet, and it will be a different experience than we've had the last couple of years. But there are big things we have in front of us, and I think that we have the opportunity to take those on. So I'm looking forward to this. I really appreciate it, and appreciate the confidence in the council.
Thank
And
you.
Mayor DeGolia, with your permission, I know there were a few folks that wanted to make a comment. Oh, Councilmember Lewis, please.
No, go ahead.
So just in order that I see you, I see Mr. Becker is on camera. If you'd like to make a comment, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to first congratulate Mayor Lewis and thank you for your service. People in this community volunteer their time and energy to decide the direction of the city. And I know it's a lot of time, and being mayor is always a big step up in commitment. I know for me being a regular council member, which is also a big commitment of time, and especially during the pandemic. We are, as Rick mentioned, obviously we've all kinds of, you mentioned in your remarks, all kinds of new issues coming at us. And I just appreciate your leadership, appreciate your work on the new Civic Center. It was fun to be there at the groundbreaking, running around, but I was there for a bunch of it, and it's beautiful. And so congratulations for getting that done and for your level-headed and practical leadership during this past year. And so on behalf of the districts, the residents of District 13, just want to thank you for your service. And want to congratulate incoming Mayor Rick DeGolia. I've known Rick for a long time and have utmost confidence in your leadership, Rick. And it was great to hear you talk about issues just now. Quiet zones, one of my big passions is great separations up and down the Caltrain line and getting more regional, state, and federal money for those so we can have more quiet zones. But it's glad to hear that, of course, Atherton is leading there, as well as you talked about the master plan and finishing the Civic Center and other work that has to be done. And I wish you all good luck on that. I want to thank Tom too for his leadership, because I also heard that he has heard about the same job that he has done. So thank you for letting me be here today, and just I want to congratulate incoming Vice Mayor Widmer as well for that, and look forward to working with all of you in the year ahead. As your neighbor right here in Menlo Park, right near the Dutch Goose, very close. So I wanted to pop in here and be able to be with you tonight.
Thank you, Josh.
And I see Leslie Bulbuck, you have the floor.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much. I'm here this evening representing Assembly Member Mark Berman, and he's out of town, so unfortunately he could not attend virtually. I'd just like to give, on behalf of Assembly Member Berman, congratulations to Mayor Lewis, and thank you so much for stepping up during what's been just a really challenging time, not only for our area, but worldwide. And, I know that serving is, it can be a challenge, and thank you for stepping up to do what's sometimes a little bit of a thankless job. And also, I want to convey our thanks and congratulations and best wishes to incoming Mayor DeGolia and Vice Mayor Widmer. So thank you very, very much, and we look forward to working with you this next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
And I don't see any other hands, Mayor DeGolia.
Okay, if there is any other public comment on this item, if anybody wishes to make comment, now is a good time to do it. I don't see any hands up.
No, sir.
From my view.
No, none from me either.
Okay, great. So we need to move on. Don't we need to do an oath of office?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
So you'll give me one moment while I pull my oath up here for you. All right.
You guys don't know it by heart?
I was just debating if I should wing it, but here we go.
I state your name.
Yes. So
Swear.
you got it. So if you both would raise your right hands and repeat after me. I state your name.
I,
I,
Bill,
Rick Golia,
Do solemnly swear
do
do
solemnly
solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United
United
States
States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
and that I will
well
and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
All right, thank you, Pope.
Okay, so we're moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. You have before you the written city manager's report with all the various departmental reports attached to it. I have met with each council member. There were a few questions and requests for clarification and expanded information, but nothing I need to report out this evening. Happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Does anybody have any questions?
I spoke with city manager about all my comments and concerns, and I think he's addressing them for me.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on. The next item is the consent calendar, which is items 7 through 11. Does anyone on the council wish to pull an item on the consent calendar? Or make a comment on any item on the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, does anyone from the public wish to pull an item on the consent calendar? Okay, I don't see any interest in pulling anything from the consent calendar. Can I get a motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
I think Mr. Polito beat me to it.
Okay, I have a motion from Bill Widmer and a second from Bob Polito. Could we please do a roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Polito,
Aye.
Hawkins,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Widmer,
Aye.
and Mayor DeGolia.
Aye. Okay, that was item 7 through 11. The next item is item 12, which addresses a resolution to adopt the 2021 San Mateo County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You have the police chief on the line as well, who was the primary for this particular staff report, but I'll give a brief introduction. In 2016, the town worked with county OES and ultimately adopted the 2016 multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan. That plan is typically reviewed every few years, every 5 years or so. The 2021 plan expands on the number of participating partners throughout the county. It increased public participation in the planning process, and it incorporated new and critical risk areas across the county just by the virtue of increasing that public participation and partnerships. The town participated in the review along the way with all the other cities and towns in the county. The plan, as submitted this evening, was reviewed and approved by FEMA, Cal OES at the state, the County Disaster Council, as which Vice Mayor Bill Widmer, I think, is the current representative to that, and the County Board of Supervisors. And then each city and town then adopts the plan for ultimate incorporation into our own local emergency operational plan, which is about a 3.5 to 4 inch thick document on our end. While the local hazards themselves haven't really changed significantly from 2016 to 2021, the 2021 is a living document and is extremely data heavy, as you could tell from the 1,000 or so pages that you received. The town is one of the final agencies that remain to adopt the plan, and it's recommended the council adopt the plan this evening. Staff's here to answer any questions, and as I mentioned, the chief was one of the primary movers and shakers over there in the police department, along with the commander. That concludes the staff report.
Does anyone on the council have any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions of clarification. Is there any public comment on the disaster plan?
I only see Mr. Pressing, Mr. Owen as the folks joining, so I don't think so.
I don't see any public comment, so I'll bring back to council. Or is there any comment from the council on the disaster plan?
The only thing I could mention, Rick, is one of the big things is the emergency operations used to report to the sheriff's department. And of course, as you know, from attending some of those meetings, during the pandemic, that responsibility moved over to the county manager. And so a lot of the changes are associated with that change and his departments now that have responsibility for that. So that was one of the big drivers here, and it's very consistent with what's happening statewide. So we went over it as part of the emergency operations groups. We went over it in several meetings and incorporated many of the comments that came from all the towns. So it's a good document, although it's a tad bit long.
So can I just interject and ask a little?
Okay, well, I've got a hand from Diana.
Oh.
But if yours is a follow-on to Bill's comment.
Well, it kind of was, it is,
Okay.
because I think that's very good observation and insight on that. And it seems to me from the CK board, regionally, that this move is to try to get more seamless help throughout our county instead of having just, individual little cities, in isolated pockets. So to kind of get more emergency services provided on a regional basis. So,
Okay, thanks. Diana?
I was just going to say that this is certainly a really important topic, emergency response. And I'd like to see us focus also, in addition to what this is, which is countywide, but focus a little more strongly locally. We have the opportunity that we're going to be opening our emergency center. And we have a very strong citizen communication group, the ADAPT, and I'd like to propose that we focus more energy on that and maybe even have a liaison position created to work directly with them. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble talking. My mouth is really stiff, so sorry.
Okay. Well, I think that this is an extremely important item. We have 819 pages of importance in front of us, which is daunting. But the issue of a liaison to ADAPT is something we can deal with in the future. It's really separate from this, although certainly ADAPT is connected in terms of our particular disaster preparedness. I don't have any other comment on this. Bob, did you have a comment?
No, other than the fact that I guess it was Bill's comment that it was a tad bit long, that's the most gross understatement I've ever heard.
That's the truth.
And as I understand, we didn't even get it all. There's another bunch of pages. So it's a mind-boggling document. but something that I think we have no choice but to move forward and adopt, which if it's time to make a motion, I so move.
Can I make one comment real
Yeah,
quick?
no, you can still comment after a motion is made. I've got a motion from Bob, and go ahead, Diana.
I was just going to say, as part of the study that went into that, there was a tool that was created that we should alert our citizens to, where you can actually type in your address of your house and it will tell you what your particular risks are. So it's a very interesting tool. I saw it when it was first earlier and it was really buggy, but I have to imagine it's better by now. And maybe we should promote that as part of this whole process to let people know that's out there.
Can do.
Great.
Is any of our staff can update on the rollout of that app?
Are you talking about Zone Haven?
No, it was part of this thing where you know what, I'll send it to Anthony, but you can, like I said, you can enter your address in and it'll tell you what your risks are, like what percentage are you at risk for flood or for all the different hazards.
Is
It
that
came
just
out of-
pages?
it came out of the USGS.
Yeah, okay.
It came out of the USGS.
I
So-
think I guess I assumed it was part of this because when I attended a Zoom that they were talking about this, and that's where they gave us the website for it. But it might be something that puts, because part of our goal as part of this big document is to educate people. And that's one interesting little tool that gets people more aware of what our specific things are. They can, like I said, it's very personal.
Well, it'd be good to know more about that.
Yeah, well, if that's accurate, then if staff could publish that to the rest of the council and no doubt in the newsletter that goes out to our residents, that would be great. This is a daunting document that none of us can be reasonably expected to have read.
Right.
I will note that in going through it, there are some sections that specifically deal with Atherton. And if you haven't looked at those sections, I would recommend that you take a look at them. And there's probably more than I've identified because I'm not reading this document, but pages 71, 573, and 645, and no doubt associated pages with those all have some specific reference to Atherton. And I'm sure that there's others, but I noted those in particular. So I have a motion to approve. I would like to get a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I don't see any
Public
interest.
comment?
Well, I've already asked for public comment.
You did.
If there's additional public comment, we can take it now.
There's no public, sorry.
Okay, could we please do a roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Polito,
I vote to approve.
Hawkins,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Whitmer,
Aye.
Mayor DeGolia.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we are moving on to item 13.
All right, now we're into some numbers and some fun. You've all probably seen this spreadsheet before that I'm going to put on the screen. And I did make a minor correction to it in relation to the reserve set aside, but I'll walk through that as well. The objective this evening isn't to make any decisions, recommend any priorities, or put any money in any buckets. The objective this evening is to walk the council through how this spreadsheet works, because it's going to become a fundamental part of fiscal year 21-22's budget process. So Robert and I will be using this spreadsheet as we walk the council through identifying priorities and all of those master plans that the mayor indicated this evening, and setting aside money into each of those buckets in the hopes of doing some of those projects. So first, I'm going to put the spreadsheet on the screen, and then we're going to start walking through the different components of that spreadsheet. And then with council's permission, I'll walk through some, plugging in some numbers just so you see how that works. I've talked with a number of you one-on-one about some different priorities and expectations for the coming years in terms of where we should put some of that money. But again, we're not going to do all of that focus this evening. It's just to give you an orientation of how that spreadsheet works. Everybody clear on that part of it? Wonderful. All right, let me see if I can get my computer screen to do what I want it to do here. All right, so you should see the spreadsheet on your screen there.
Can you make it bigger?
I can. Is that any better?
Yes. But that doesn't show the whole thing, does it?
No, the bigger I make it, the smaller section you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're going to go through it section by section, and I'll pull it out when we're going to start to plug in some numbers so you can see how that works. So the first part of this, in terms of orientation, we've numbered all the columns or lettered all the columns across the top, A, B, C, D, E, etc. And then on the left, you have line numbers 1 through 44. So as we're talking about the spreadsheet, we'll reference a column or we'll reference a line number. And Robert Barone, jump in anytime at any point in terms of how I'm explaining this if I'm going in the wrong direction, or you start getting worried that I'm spending too much money. So at the top part of this spreadsheet is all of our major revenues. These are broken down into our major revenue source, which is basic property tax. We receive basic property tax. I'm on line 1, column A, in fiscal year 2021, which is the actual number from last fiscal year. We received property taxes of $11.3 million. We receive property taxes twice a year. We receive approximately half in December, and the other half we receive in the April-May timeframe. So there is a good 7-month revenue drought of our major revenue source between April, May, and December, where we're reliant on what the funds that we have in our unallocated general fund balance in the bank for all of our operations. Then we have sales tax, about 213,000, franchise fees, another 908, business license, 264, planning, 231, building, which is our next most significant revenue stream besides property tax. That's building permits and planning permits. That comes in about $1.8 million. Usually we hover around that amount most years. Police has some revenues. Public Works has encroachment fees and other permits that they bring in as well. The park revenue, it's extremely down. You can see there at 55,000 for the fiscal year 2020-21. But we expect that to increase, particularly given the change in the way the contract works, where we are actually receiving 100% of the rental revenue. The other miscellaneous fees or revenue there, the 1.075 number, that's probably twice as much as it usually is. That includes things such as, post office fees, donations, settlements and claims, drone permits, things like that. But the main reason this one is so high in 2020 to 2021 is the anomaly year, is where the rule, that is construction and demolition deposits that were forfeited. Yeah, because we extracted out the Rule 20A and it's down below under one-time revenues from that. So those are our major revenues as they come into the town. Then we have in lines 12 through 15, one-time revenues or at-risk revenue. And we call excess ERAF and VLF in lieu at-risk revenue, because every year we sort of have to fight for it with the state to make sure that we're going to continue to receive it. And as you notice, VLF in 2020, 2021 came in at 1.8 million. We budgeted less than that, and it came in higher. But the state has said already that they're not going to give us the entirety of our ERAF in the coming year, 2021, 22. So we're estimating it back down at 1.1 million. And then those revenues that you see there, they all go up each year by a percentage that we're plugging in. And those are in the left-hand column there next to the line numbers. So basic property tax we have going up by 4%, increasing every year. That is the safe amount from HDL. It's the 2% escalation every year based on the CPI and per capita revenue, and then known increases that we're aware of. But it usually will come in somewhere between 4 and 7%. We just can't guarantee the difference between the 4 and the 7. So we projected at the safe 4%. Everything else, we're projecting at 2 to 3% increases. And then because ERAF and VLF and lieu are connected to property tax, they're also projected at that same 4% going forward. So all in, on line 16, you end up with our total revenues. And those we're projecting out each year. And this spreadsheet goes out to fiscal year 26, 27, projecting those revenues forward. And you can see those numbers going up, which is a good thing for us. On the expenditure side, we have operational expenditures. I'm going to start with column 21, 22, column B. So operational expenditures are projected at 14.9 million. In your budget that you recently adopted, that number was actually 16.5 million in operational expenditures. And why this number is less is we extracted out the ARC OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and the UAL CalPERS pension unfunded actuarial liability, lines 20 and 21. We extracted those out for visibility so that as you go down in the lower section of the spreadsheet, if you want to pay those off sooner or make contributions towards them, you can see the impact. But they are typically included in line 17 under operational expenditures in the budget every year. Those operational expenditures we're projecting at 5% increase. That doesn't mean that everything goes up 5%. It's just we needed a number to put in there, and most things do go up somewhere between 3 and 5%. Then we have, in this fiscal year anyway, we have general fund allocations of 6.1 million. The bulk of that goes to the town center project. As you notice, that goes away in the future out years. The council on a regular basis will allocate some funds from the general fund into the capital improvement fund for specific capital improvement projects that aren't funded from some other source like Measure A or Measure W from the county and all of those other funding sources that we get, gas tax, et cetera. Those are part of the capital improvement fund. This spreadsheet only addresses the general fund. So if we want to allocate money toward those buckets that we're going to be talking about later, this is where you'd see that in line 18 in those out years. You would see that CIP general fund allocations, and they drop down into the capital improvement fund. Line 19 is COP debt service. You see this only going out to year 23, 24, and we projected it only out to that year because the council has expressed the commitment to pay off the COP in year 5 at the 5-year call. And as we go down on the spreadsheet, you'll see us ramping up funding set aside so that we can put another $5 million toward the COP to pay it off at year 5. Those are the ARC, line 20, line 21 is the ARC, OPEB, and UAL CalPERS pension numbers we talked about before. So then total general fund expenditures are on line 22, the yellow line as it goes across. Those are netted out each year against line 16, and you see the net number below. In years 2020, 2021, and 21, 22, you see that as a negative number, meaning we're drawing down on our unallocated general fund balance. In the out years, it's a positive number, meaning we're adding to our unallocated general fund balance. Line 25 is the net number. That's the number that we're working with before we set aside our emergency reserves. This is the running balance of our general fund before we set aside our mandatory reserves. Line 26 and 27, you see the two set asides for those mandatory reserves, the 15% emergency reserve and the 20% operational reserve. Staff cannot touch those emergency reserves or the operational reserve without specific council authority from a public meeting. So the general fund balance is not allowed to go below those amounts in total at any given point. If it does, Robert needs to show the auditor that he's got a piece of paper that says the council authorized him to do this, as do I. So in reality, looking at the net general fund, let's look at 2021, 22, the 13.9 0.4 million. You take out the 2.4, the 3.3 of your reserves, and in reality, what you have is 7.6 million left in your unallocated general fund balance to allocate toward some of these set aside buckets below. And the way the spreadsheet works is when you start allocating money into it, you'll see the numbers on line 28 trickle down and disappear over time, the more you allocate into some of those set aside buckets. We do have a set number of set aside buckets here, the master plans that the mayor talked about. Line 32 is the federal funding grant match for Congresswoman Eshu's. For Congresswoman Eshu, the Alameda de las Pulgas Transport Traffic Safety Corridor Grant Program, $2 million we requested. That's part of the infrastructure at the federal level. We have not yet received final notification that that's approved, but it does have a set aside of about $450,000 that we would have to allocate toward it if it is approved. So that's just a placeholder in there in year 22-23. Line 36 are the placeholders for setting aside funds to pay off the COP at year 5. So we're setting aside $1.1 million in each of those years, in a final of 1.8 million in year 23-24 to pay off that 5-year COP. And then at the end of that, you have the net available after all of those set asides. So this is the number that we are paying attention to that says, in reality, if you go across this column, we've really only got about $4.1 million to spend over that period of time, because that's the lowest common denominator after all the set asides.
So George, just a quick question. With the pandemic continuing on, and people extending times with regards to when we're projected to break out and when we're going to stop with the emergency authorizations and things like that. Is there a possibility that on line 15, the 1.707 will be a larger number?
I assume that that's a possibility in the next budget cycle at the state level, but we haven't heard any indications of that.
Okay, my budget, but okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That's the American Rescue Plan, 1.7 million. We have received 50% of that so far. The other 50%, I believe we get in April of next year.
Towards the end of June, actually.
June.
Okay,
June.
They say it's within, yeah.
But the 50% that we've already received, you're showing in next year's?
No, it's showing in the current year.
We're showing the full amount.
Is in fiscal year 21-22.
I see. Okay.
So this number down here on line 41, the recommended minimum unallocated fund balance, 10%. So Robert and I get nervous. If Robert has to have a piece of paper that says he can't spend any money of the operational or the emergency set aside, and we start plugging in a bunch of numbers in this set aside buckets, and so our unallocated fund balance drops below a certain amount, we start to get nervous, because on a monthly basis, we're putting out about $1.3 to $1.5 million. And we have about a 7-month drought where we're reliant on our unallocated fund balance to have a positive flow, cash flow, basically. So we've recommended about a 10%. It can be anywhere from 5 to 10%, but we think there needs to be something in there to protect us from inadvertently violating council policy and then creating a red flag by the auditor that says, hey, you violated policy without approval. We don't want to comment in our audit report like that. So we're recommending some number to be put in there. And what that number means to us is the yellow number on line 40 shouldn't drop below the number on line 41. If it does, we call attention to it. But as I mentioned in one of my emails out to the council, in reality, capital projects are paid out over time. They all come about in June, July, and August, which also happens to be that drought period of revenue from property tax. But they're paid out over time. They're not paid out all at once. So there will be a stretch of that money. So it can be anywhere from 5 to 10%, but we think there needs to be something as a floor before we start, as we go across that column. And then at the bottom, you have the long-term liabilities. In this left-hand column here, you got the pension UAL number as it existed in 2019, 2020, and the OPEB UAL number and the COP number. So as you change numbers up above and add numbers toward, any of these set-aside buckets to pay these off, you'll see the impact on these as they go down. We also have allocations to each of them up above on line 20 and 21 that are mandatory allocations based on CalPERS or the OPEB requirements. Councilmember Lewis. You're muted, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So I have two questions. And as you know, what the numbers all flow down. And so I have the first question in the major expenditures item, line 17, we're plugging in a 5% increase across the board. My question comment is from 2020, 21, 2021 column, our operational expenses were like 13 million. And we plugged a 5% increase for 21, 22, and then another 5%. I am asking, I think that, don't you feel that just ramping up to this new building and the expenses are going to be more than that initially? And we really don't know because we don't have the history in operating the new building and the site, but that there will be, some unforeseen expenses. I mean, with the landscaping, with this, just kind of bringing the building online. So with that, then things do, it flows down. And so that line item number 41 gets even less robust. And so we don't have as much. So that's my first question. And then the second question is, I know that the COP in line item number 36, the COP debt service, we've got plugged in 1.1 million, 1.1. That is, I'm not going to say an arbitrary number, but that's a number that we backed into if we were going to pay the whole thing off in year 5. That is a fungible number.
I'll take the first one first. So on the expenditure side, I think you're absolutely correct. What the buildings are unknowns at present. Fiscal year 2021, 22 is fixed. We already budgeted for those numbers, but we'll have about 6 months under our belt in these new buildings because we're in them now by the next budget cycle. So 22, 23. So we'll have an idea. And if that number needs to change on line 17 for fiscal year 22, 23, that's where that adjustment would come in, and then it would just escalate from there.
So what percentage, because we're not in the entire project. I mean, we don't have our council chambers done. We don't have, the landscaping and things. And of course, the library has the historic chambers and the library building, so we don't have to worry about that so much. But anyway.
Yeah, we just don't know. But what we want to be careful of is that we're not plugging in a higher percentage earlier on that is compounded in some of those out years. We want to get to a real expense number that we know and then move it up. So we're just being judicious. Mm-hmm. But you're right, it could get larger and then eliminate some of that money. Your second question on the COP debt service, the 1.1 million, that number is absolutely arbitrary. It could be less. It's only plugged in that way so that we can gradually increase to pay it off at year 5. But if we don't pay it off at year 5, technically those would all go away, and we would add back here on line 19. We would add back in an annual debt service amount in those 3 future out years that don't have it.
But it would be kind of substantially less than.
Well, that debt service would remain the same, or somewhat the same. It might go up a little bit because we didn't do the call, but it would be another 800 to 900,000 in these 3 years here. Mm-hmm. And then down below, these numbers would go away.
Mhm, mhm. Okay,
You need to have more to allocate to other boxes.
right.
Okay, so let's make sure we're focusing on questions. Bob?
Yeah, just real quickly, I understand your minimum unallocated fund balance that you're looking for. Just out of curiosity, where did that 1440 come from? Because I'm looking for a $14 million number above that in that column, and I can't find one.
So the 1440, this is something the mayor and I actually walked through where he caught the error in the spreadsheet. So the 1440 is 10% of our operational costs, which is basically half the 20% operational reserve. That operational reserve at 20% is a combination of three numbers, which is the operational expenditures, the ARC OPEB, and the UAL.
Okay. I should have, I don't have the spreadsheet up on my computer. I could have gone in and looked at the formula, but I didn't have it up.
So, George, I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
One is, in the current year, we have received fairly substantial donations that went to the town center. And I don't see where those donations are reflected.
They would be reflected within the CIP budget, which is not the general fund.
Okay, so that's fine. Okay, and then if you could go down to the 10% holdback. Anything that we put into these set aside buckets, we're not necessarily spending. They're set aside in anticipation that we'll be spending them. So they're not treated the same as the reserves. The reserves are, are an amount that you can't go into without council approval. But if we don't spend the set-asides, then those funds would just remain in the net available fund balance. When we put them into the set-aside bucket, we are effectively removing them in the accounting process from the net available fund balance. But that's anticipating that we'll use them, which we know we don't always do. And I recognize the value, and you and I had quite a lengthy conversation about this, the value of the recommended minimum allocated fund, so that we don't ever want finance to have to come to the council, get approval to pay a bill because we're too close to the numbers and there isn't sufficient funds before we get our property tax payments to be able to cover those bills. So I agree that some recommended minimum unallocated fund balance makes sense. I think 5% is more reasonable than 10%. And it may be that as we go through this, when we recognize, well, we really need 8%, that we can make that adjustment. That's easy to do. For planning purposes, I don't want to be overly conservative because I know we're already, and my experience in 8 years on the council is that the accounting is always very conservative. And we're constantly not facing a situation where we're short, but where we're long. And as we go through our planning, well, that's a comment. So anyway, I just wanted, the question is, will 5% for the initial planning work for you in that category?
Yes. So anywhere between 5 and 10%, I think would be a reasonable number. And you're right, the set aside buckets are set aside. They're not set aside funds, they're not restricted funds, they're all within the unallocated fund balance, except for the fact that much like when you budget in your CIP, the current year, if you put anything in that current year set aside bucket, to me, that means that's a specific project. And if it's a specific project, it's going to happen, whether it happens this year or mid-year or cross years, it's planned to happen, like the circulation plan or something like that in the park, or some other park master plan or drainage master plan project. out year projects, they may or may not happen in that year, or they may get pushed out into further years based on available funding or grant seeking opportunities or something like that. So you're absolutely right.
Okay, great. Bob has a question.
Yeah, just real quickly, I agree with Rick. 5% should be plenty. In the 8 or 10 years I've been doing this, with the exception of once the Civic Center started, and I haven't studied those numbers, but we have never, ever spent as much as we budgeted. We've always been under budget by the end of the year, sometimes by millions. So I think 5% is adequate. And I also don't understand that needing city council approval to make an exception. I mean, you're not going to make an exception because the water bill is going to throw you over. You're just going to not pay the water bill that month and roll it forward into the next month. But if there's an exception that's required, you can call a council meeting quickly to get it fixed if it's something really major. I actually can't see that happening. So I think 5% is more than enough.
I have to agree with Bob. I agree with
Diana.
I was just going to ask a procedural question, being new to this. How do we go about deciding the percentage that goes in the buckets? Do we have a specific meeting at a specific time where we discuss them at length and we look at the master plan and decide?
So this is a new process this year, but traditionally the council has a budget process where we also, staff will make recommendations that promulgate up from staff as well as committees like Park and Rec and Bike Ped as to what projects should be in the capital improvement plan. That's where we spend most of our money. And then as we go through the budget process, you'll get a look at what those project recommendations are and you approve them as part of that process. This spreadsheet is, for me, this helps us plan for some of those projects. So I'm going to bring this spreadsheet back to you as a council sometime in February, at the regular meeting in February, to start talking about those master plans that the mayor indicated and start planning out where we want to put some of those big project numbers, what you want to put into each bucket. Now, a drainage project can be small, like a just small swale in front of some street, or it could be a huge project like we did up on Marsh Road. And that will throw these numbers percentage-wise in dramatic ways. But, you could put a smaller project in the green infrastructure plan or smaller amounts of funds and facility replacement. So it's going to vary based on what the concept of the projects are. So it's not really a percentage allocation. It's more just what kind of a project do we want to do? Where are the priorities at?
Okay.
And so that takes place as a group discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to push that question out, it sounds like George, your specific answer to the question, because this is a new form for us to be addressing, is that you're going to initiate that conversation with the council at the February meeting.
Yes.
Okay, great. Bill.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my couple comments are as follows. I think that first off, I appreciate you sending this out and updating it. I took it and I started populating different things and playing around with it. And I would hope that we would all do that as we start going into the budgeting process. I'm 100% with both Rick and with Bob that, and I've said several times during our budgeting process, we always seem to underestimate the revenues and overestimate the expenses, which then turns into surpluses. So, I think 5% is probably the right number. As we're playing with these things before we get together as a group, I do think that it would be important that perhaps we would have some sessions where in some of the master plans that we've put together, it might be good for us to, in preparation for this, George, is that we maybe come up with a prioritization of some things within the bike ped, within the drainage master plan, et cetera, so we know what we're looking at, and then we could plan those things on a multi-year basis and kind of put those things together. So I think this is a great tool. I think 5% is more than enough. I also agree with Bob that we could always have a special meeting and get approval if you ran into problems, but I just can't see that would happen. But I understand your concern. But thank you for sending this out. And, I just encourage, my colleagues that we would go ahead and start thinking about, 50,000 here, or 25,000 there, et cetera, to come up with some ideas so that we would have some fruitful discussions, and maybe we could each share our own version of the spreadsheet, to try and come to some consensus. So thanks, appreciate it.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I thought we were on comments, sorry.
No, that's okay. But I just want to take public comment and see if there is any public comment. If there is, now is a good time to give public comment on this.
Nobody in the room. Oh, wait, there's an S that just came on board. I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
It's Steve Brinkley who keeps, I think, dropping off for some reason. They keep joining and then dropping off. So I don't know if that
Well, it's okay, but it's still necessary to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any public comment. George, let me push out one comment on what I brought up, because now, as I really focus on this, there are some things in the set aside that we would intentionally not be spending. So in fact, they would be creating a buffer even without the 5%. And the one that's obvious is the facility replacement. If we were to fund, before we built the town center, we had a $500,000 or $505,000 facility replacement that we used in the course of building the town center. But if we were adding in an annual facility replacement, effectively, that as long as we don't restrict that, which I wouldn't think we need to do, then that would enable some form of a buffer.
So if you're creating a buffer within the general fund by setting aside some funds like that, that's possible. But the facility replacement fund is a separate fund from the general fund. So you're actually, like the capital improvement fund, extracting it out from an auditing perspective, even though it's in the same bank account. From an auditing perspective, it's a separate fund.
Okay, great.
Any of these master plans, though, if you're saying, let's say in the first year, you say, we know we're going to do a big drainage project in the next 3 years. So we want to start saving, $1 million in each year, much like we're doing for the COP debt service. You're absolutely right. That creates a buffer for us in terms of the general fund.
Right. And frankly, the COP debt service until the payoff would do that.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other comments from members of the council? It sounds like we're going to deal with this in great detail, effectively doing what Bill recommended beginning in February, and it'll become part of our budget process.
Yes, and in between now and February, what I hope to do with our Public Works Director, Mr. Ovadia, who's on the phone this evening as well, is to create that high priority project list for the council, provide you that list independently of a meeting, each of you, and then also provide you with links to each of those respective master plans, so you have that for reference. And those master plans have estimates for those projects. That might be the priority projects, although they're a little out of date. But there are estimates within each of those. And then you could start playing with those numbers before our meeting in February.
Right. Okay. Bob.
Yeah, just my hot button is the unfunded liabilities for our pension plans. And my intent, while I was still on the finance committee, and so now it's my intent as a member of the council, is to play with those numbers in the sense that what happens if we don't pay off the COP debt and continue on making the fully amortized payments of 870 grand a year, which would pay it off in 10 years, and instead make a lump sum payment to CalPERS. Essentially, we're taking 2% money and paying off 7% plus money. But But to accurately, I can't just plug that into the spreadsheet because other numbers are affected. Specifically, if George, if you go up there, the mandatory UAL payments are affected. And of course, in theory, now there's no guarantees when you're talking CalPERS, but in theory, those payments should go way, way down, freeing up a lot of other money for to hit the bottom line. So my intent was to give 1 or 2 or 3 scenarios of prepayment to the CalPERS guy before he comes to the next finance meeting and ask him to give us very specific, at least as specific as he can, responses as to how that's going to affect those numbers as well as our liabilities, so we can get accurate numbers and not guesstimates. I think he should be able to do that somewhat readily and get into the ballpark, because I imagine he's got a tool kind of like this spreadsheet that will generate the kind of numbers we're looking for. But so I'm going to be working with George and Robert, kind of being a pain in their neck to try and get those questions to the CalPERS guy soon, so that he has plenty of time. I don't want him to come and say, well, you just asked me the question yesterday. I didn't have time to look at it. So I just wanted to put that out, as considering it's the biggest liability we have. I think it needs attention and we need to start working on it.
So with that, does everyone kind of understand exactly how the spreadsheet works? It's not rocket science by any stretch, but I'm happy to go through and start plugging in some hypotheticals if you wanted to look at it in that way. Otherwise, we can leave it here and let you play with it.
Well, I think, why don't you update it and at least make your set aside 5% and resend it out like you did this morning.
Can do.
I mean, we could do that. And then I think that Bob had a very pertinent question or comment that, if in fact we're making voluntary contributions to the UAL, then that would reduce the numbers that were further up. And if we could get some clarity on that, that would also provide us a little bit more information that we could then make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I want to add to that. So just thinking at a high level, and I could be way off here, Bob, but I like the idea. I mean, after all, it's trading it's retaining 2% and getting rid of 7%. That obviously makes good financial sense. But when I'm looking at the numbers, it looks to me like basically what we'd be doing is we'd be taking out the set aside for the COP debt service, adding back in for the out years, the 861,000, which we wouldn't have otherwise had, and reducing by some number the CalPERS pension number. So I would just have to look at the numbers.
Right.
I'm hoping we'd be reducing that CalPERS pension number by something related to the difference between 1.1 million and 861,000, but I don't know if that's accurate.
Well, no, contrary to the way George just put it on the screen, I wasn't envisioning making a discretionary $1 million payment each year. I'm talking about making a big payment in next fiscal year, a lump sum payment of maybe $4 or $5 million.
Based on a bond, right?
The COP. I mean, we already have the money. We don't have to go through.
It's not a bond.
Again. We don't have to do. What are you saying, George?
No, I'm just saying it's not a bond. What you're suggesting is using our unallocated fund balance, setting aside $5 million, paying that directly to CalPERS, not paying off our COP at the 5-year call, letting that play out and see what the impact is, not only to our pension UAL number down here at the bottom, but also to this operational number that we're paying every year.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And if you just plug in a payment in the next fiscal year to reduce the UAL and extend out the debt service on the certificates of participation, you still don't blow the budget. You'll still have, I already went through that exercise. I'm just saying it's a very incomplete exercise without knowing what's really going to happen to the UAL. And
Yeah.
the reason I want to pay it up forward is because the sooner we do it, we get that differential. We get rid of the 7% debt.
Right. Right.
Yeah, the number you don't know what's going to happen is this line 21, which CalPERS says is a mandatory contribution every year as part of their actuarials. That number, if we make that lump sum payment, should theoretically drop significantly.
Yeah, definitely.
But we just don't know what it is.
Right. And unfortunately, it takes them, they're always 2 years behind. So
Yeah.
When the rubber hits the road or the real facts, we won't know for a while, but this guy should be able to give us an educated guess. And if he's as far off as they are on everything else they've ever done, then we go to war, I guess. I don't know.
Well, we should explore it. I think everybody would agree with that.
George, I just have a comment. Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. It should be on line 34.
Yeah, I put it in the wrong line. There you go. Now you see the impact of it.
You see the reduction.
Okay, well, I think we're going to deal with, we can deal with this in our one-on-one discussions with you between now and February, and as a group, we'll deal with it in February. And hopefully Bob will have a chance to get to the CalPERS fellow before then. I mean, that's a really valuable thing to do, to have them tell us what they would see.
Yep. And we'll work on that part.
Okay, so I think we're done with this item.
Yes. Thank you very much for your input and your feedback. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're moving on to item 14, which is the 2021 annual goals report, which is also a new item for us.
This is also a new item, and this is only a receive and file item, but I'd just like to note that this is where did you all go? Sorry, I lost my screen. There you are. Sorry. This is a new item. This year we started putting together the annual goals report. It's a lot of work by staff putting together the various things that they did into one package for the council, but we thought it was important for not only the council, but the public to see all the different things that we work on here in all the different priority areas that the council established. But also there's a lot that goes on around the fringes that fill in a lot of that as well. And that's what this goals report does. There's the major categories that the council's outlined as goals and objectives. We filled in reports and activities along those lines, but there's also this catch-all box at the bottom of each of them that's all the other projects and responsibilities and tasks that staff's completed over the years that relate to those big main policy goals and objectives. So it's a receive and file. We hope to do it every year. You'll notice in every staff report now, there's also a section in that staff report that talks about goal alignment, just to make sure that what we're doing as an organization and what you're doing as a council is consistent with your overall goals and policies. So that's the basis of this report. We hope to do one every year.
Great. Okay, are there any questions from anyone on the council? I don't see any questions. Oh, I have one question, George. So in the course of this report, you, in quite a bit of detail, have identified the goals and a series of sub-goals within each category. And are those the items that, I didn't go back and look at what we had agreed to when we all met with Nancy Hetrick, but I assume that this essentially came out of that meeting with her, and either you or she published a summary of those goals from that meeting. Is that what these are?
Exactly. These are those.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry, I didn't quite
Let's see if there's any public comment on this matter. I don't.
And I don't have anyone other than Mr. Brickley here from the public, sir.
Okay, I don't see any public comment. Are there any comments from members of the council? Seeing none, I'm happy to report that this meeting is ending after an hour and a half.
All right, good job. Good job, Rick.
I can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Hey, have a wonderful Christmas and holiday, everybody.
What happened to our cupcakes?
Oh, yeah, time
yeah,
to
you
have the
can-
cupcakes.
We were supposed to do cupcakes.
Oh,
could've
I
been-
ate mine with my dinner. I'm sorry.
You couldn't have eaten
Why
all
didn't you
six.
go?
This is special, you guys, because
I didn't
last time
eat
I
all
ate mine
six.
too.
I want you to know I didn't eat all 6. I only ate 1. Okay.
You got 6?
Well, Diana made up for that for you.
Anthony, you said they were only getting 4 each. That meant staff could have had.
Well, there were
Staff
6.
should have had some.
I don't know. If one of the staff members wants to come over and get one of mine, I'm more than happy to provide it. Okay. I'll drive it over tomorrow.
In the Bentley.
I'll accept.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Okay, everybody.
Have a great holiday. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Thanks.